Oops. Very precarious. Okay. Does this make a difference? What is it anyway? Oh my gosh. Hey, look at that. Technological. I'll put it on. I don't think it makes any difference. Okay, this is sitting on the camera is sitting on a very precarious little ledge here, which I think is a fantastic metaphor for what this is. So the one thing that's been happening in these iterations, and this is now the sixth day, is that I do it when I have the compulsion and the urge to do it, and really that means I haven't really thought about what I want to say. And if I want to say it, and that's part of the point, is that I'm curious to see what just emerges naturally from, this maybe a subconscious space or a space that's not prepared, because it's more interesting. It's more interesting, I think, if it's done that way, at least for this experiment. I was going through old notebooks. Okay, so let's put the context. It's about, time is now, let me check. 6:45 in the morning. 6:45 in the morning. And I've been up since about 5 o'clock this morning. Just got out of bed at just after 5. I woke up like at about 4:45, and I just kind of lay really still for about half an hour. It was really nice. And then I just got up, and then I've come into the studio, and I wanted to have something on, some sound in the background, so I put on a Netflix show called Please Like Me, which is now, I've actually watched it. This is the third time I'm watching it. It's Josh Thomas, Australian, and it's beautiful. It's just very tender show. Just getting messages, but there's not anything to do with this, so I'm just trying to ignore them because I'll get back to them later. But and so I've just had that on the background. I'm just tidying up. I'm just sort of going through notes and trying to remember, it's a quiet time in the studio, because I feel like it's like free time in a way, because I don't have any particular thing that I want to do or need to do. There's a few things I need to do, but I don't want to do them now. And so it's really just a time to potter around the studio and just look around. And I find sometimes the most interesting things happen through a mechanism, which I've even given a name. I call it snagging, all right? Let me write it down, actually. This is a used up notebook. So this is where I do all my thinking, basically, is in these notebooks. Why don't we actually do that? Actually, I wanted to say something. Oh yes, snagging. Let me not jump around too much and talk about what I mean by snagging. So snagging is basically when I walk around and literally get snagged on something. So my studio is a very cluttered space. I mean, it's a very busy space. There's a lot going on. Things like even this. If I leave my notebook open over there, I let it go and it opens up on some random page. And I think, well, instead of, let me turn the camera on, instead of being annoyed by that, see, well, what is the opportunity that is presenting? Why is it opening to that page? And I call that kind of snagging. So if I'm walking around, I might bump into a chair, or I've got to go through this narrow space here. See, the very narrow space, and then I catch on something, and then I look at what it is that I've caught on, and I think, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I should do something with that. Maybe if I take that thing that I snagged on and attach it to the thing that I'm currently working on, something interesting will emerge. And that's how a lot of random encounters happen. And it used to be an annoying thing, but now it's like an opportunity. And I realize, and I remember going to a talk about 4 years ago by I guess you could say a hero of mine, a biologist by the name of Stuart Kauffman. And he was talking about an evolutionary mechanism. He was saying, you know, if you have an organism, like in a very primitive organism, that is free floating in a pond, right? So here's the water going in this direction. The organism is just going to go along with the current. Now, if it has some way of attaching to a rock, then the current flows past it, right? Then it can start catching things. It's no longer at the mercy of the pond. It's now able to have a very different dynamic situation with the pond and suddenly it has a adaptive advantage. And I thought, well, that's snagging. Snagging is when you kind of moving along in your current trajectory and then something snags it from happening. Bodies in motion. If you look at any particle, Newton, constant velocity until hindered by something else, then their direction changes. So we always are tending to go in a direction. And how do we change direction? You know, if something doesn't make us change direction. So that's really what I'm thinking about. Well, that's what's coming to my brain right now, is like I'm thinking about this idea of snagging. Why did it come up? Oh, I can't remember. But it is about this precarious, you know, so sometimes you actually want to set yourself up so that things are a little bit precarious. I even call my studio Sid's Ledge, right? I'm Sid's Sledge, but my studio is Sid's Ledge. There's something I want it to be slightly precarious. Like it used to be a place of comfort. It still is. It still is a place of comfort, but it mustn't be too comfortable. It's got to have an element of like, you know, setting yourself up for some kind of snag, let's say. And so, yeah, that's a thought that entered my mind this morning. I was going through old notebooks. What was I doing this morning? So going through old notebooks. Let's have a look. And I came across this drawing, which I thought was very indicative of how my mind works. Let me see if I can find it and show you. I mean, why don't we just look through a notebook, like just randomly page through an old notebook. That could be a fun thing to do. All right, let's see. So this is a notebook from, sorry about the shadow. That is really irritating, that shadow. I'm going to try something here. Give me a sec. Sorry, boy. That's OJ. Okay, boy. It's all right. Come. No, you're good. He's my nervous little dog. He's a sweetheart, but he's very nervous. Put that light on. Ah, okay. So that should get rid of the shadow to some extent. Hang on. He wants to go out now. OJ, it's okay, boy. You don't have to go. You can stay here. Yeah, you're not going to have to worry. He's always worried. Hey, come inside. Come on the chair. Just going to sit him up. Oh, come here, boy. See, what's happened is I've put the chair, he can't get on his regular. Come, boy, come. Come on, let's go. There you go. Now, that's his happy place. He doesn't need a snag on anything. There you go. That's your happy place. Good boy. Okay. Now, what was I doing? So, what if I switch this light off? Is that better? Yeah, look at that. All right, so this is a notebook from about 6 months ago. What if there's anything? So let's just page through it, see what it says. Just gives you a sense of how my brain works. Also, I can catch anything. Yeah, actually, it was this drawing here which just sort of caught me this morning. I was thinking about our evolution. I must have been thinking about evolution when I did this, because I've got an evolutionary tree, and it's, you know, there's the line on top there is what is living now. And obviously Homo sapiens, us, is there. But we also have objects that, yes, are not biological, but they're also extant. They're also with us now. And to some extent, you could say they've evolved, like the toaster, all right? My machine, the evolver, the iPhone 12 is a very newly emerged object. So I'm trying to think of them as all somehow, you know, not privileging the biological, right? Like not saying just because it's biological evolution and designed, well, now of course I use the word design in a very as in not necessarily designed by some intelligent designer, but came into being by being honed by the environment, i.e., by natural selection over generations. But the toaster is kind of an object with some purposeful object that's also come about because of the emergence of these Homo sapien-like things are able to then evolve toasters and evolve machines that are eccentric and do like my Evolver machine, and then of course iPhone 12. So it's just me starting to think about ideas like that and thinking there's something in that. There's something definitely worth playing with there in terms of the work I do. So that's, and then my brain is skitting all over the place. So there's a sketch of obviously someone that was encountered in the room. If you look at it, there's a pair of glasses that are sort of falling off the front of the face for some reason. The hands, I like to try and draw things as they, so a very important thing that I'm interested in is dynamism, motion. Everything is moving all the time. And I don't want to, say if I'm drawing a portrait, I definitely don't want to draw it statically. Like I want to draw it as it emerges in motion. So there's another phylogenetic tree. I'm clearly interested in that idea. That's a drawing of my mother that I would never show because it's not very flattering, and she is much more beautiful than that. But unfortunately, my portraits are sometimes, I don't mind that portrait. Not even sure it is, but somebody was moving around in front of me. There's actually my father-in-law. I like that portrait of him. Not sure he does, but I like it because it's, well, just captures something about it. I think this is actually when I was on a trip to South Africa and visiting my parents in Pretoria. We went, there's a nature reserve just around the corner. So there's me now playing around with the idea of what I call bad machine drawings, where, you know, again, I'm trying not to privilege myself over the machines I make. So, and the one thing I've discovered is I'm a big admirer of my machine's drawings. I'm going to try and hold this page open. So yeah, for example, if we go to this drawing over here, I'm envious of the marks, excuse me, of the marks that my machine is able to make. I mean, this ripped paper is something that it did, you know, but largely this is work done by the machine, and I'm envious. I think it has a very visceral and distinct way of making marks, and I'm trying to discover it through the way it draws. So I'm most definitely trying to not steal its ideas, you know. And I often joke that one day I'm going to be sued by our AI overlords for, you know, stealing the work of early primitive machines. I shouldn't even record, you know, even this video is I'm putting myself at tremendous risk by announcing that, because, you know, when we are now under the control of the, you know, that's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but also a bit like, I don't know what the future is, actually. It's a really interesting place right now. But these are called bad machine drawings because that's me trying to emulate a machine, how it might see the world, and it probably wouldn't privilege anything about the thing it's drawing. It would just try and capture the scene in front of it in a very objective way. And with that will be all, because it doesn't know giraffes, like has a sense of them, has an intuition for them, has an emotional connection with the giraffe. It's not going to try and focus on the doughy eye of the giraffe. It's just going to try and capture this thing that is in front of it. So I'm fascinated by the psychology of that. That I think I did draw. Yeah, this is, you see, my son obviously got hold of my pen and was drawing with me. Giraffe in motion, liking the idea of things in motion. So there's an ostrich, bad machine drawing of an ostrich. Those are my parents, very bad machine drawing of my parents. Mother, father, visiting. You see, I'm visiting the Jaffa old age home now. I think that's my drawing. Yeah, I call that an oscillation drawing. I'm obviously trying now to vibrate the pen or do something different with it. There you can see the telltale sign of a toaster in the background. because I'm really thinking hard about toasters right now. And I forgot that I was thinking this much about the evolution of us and toasters, but there it is, having coffee with a friend. Very bad drawing of a hat, better drawing of a hat, and just thinking. The thinking carries on. What have I written here? I have no idea. Let's see. I'm just going to read this and see if it makes any sense. Matt doesn't know what machine is going to do next, and Evolver doesn't know what Matt is going to do next. Yeah, this is a reflection on an experiment I did. So what this is, excuse me, alluding to is my friend and colleague Matt Broom. I had him measure my machine, the Evolver, right? I had him measure it. So he came into my studio and he literally tried to measure or try to interact with my machine as a physicist would. Try to understand it, try to control it, try to understand its behavior. And it was a fascinating process because I think the ultimate, this is something that's still emerging and still unfolding as a project, but essentially, unlike a toaster, my machine is not purposeful in that way. So, and it's also essentially impossible to tune, impossible to control. And that's why I call it a portrait of myself, a model of myself, because I feel like that is kind of what I'm like. I have aspects that are regular and aspects that cannot be controlled because I can't understand them necessarily. So that is the experiment I wanted to do. See what happens if a physicist engages with a model of myself. Will I understand myself better through the eyes of a physicist? Is essentially the project that was and is still unfolding. Part of the idea there was to write that up as a scientific paper, but a bit of a satirical one, like really commenting on the idea of trying to measure something that's not really all that measurable, i.e. me. Does this say M-E, that's Matt, action, effect, action, secondary action, the Evolver, action, and then I didn't follow through the thought. In light, what can we do? What Evolver can do combined. Okay, so those are notes. This is me thinking that I actually was busy writing up that paper when I was visiting in South Africa. So these are a lot of my thoughts about that. This must have been a sketch at the house we were staying at. I must have been sitting having my morning coffee and, figures in motion, figures not being completed because they moved off for whatever reason. I'm in Cape Town, visiting family. Everything is on its way to becoming a bridge. Thought that it popped into my head, which I liked. The idea. I have nothing to say about that, but what is the behavior of the Evolver? Where is... Not sure what I'm saying there. That's, I think, a drawing of my wife, Galia, and my son, Ruben, and he's studying for his bar mitzvah, the Barmy lesson it's even called. That's what that is. More sketching, or family visiting, drawing on the beach, family on the beach, lying on the beach. Just keep the pen moving, really, is the idea. More thinking happening here, more thinking. And then this is quite a nice sort of developed drawing of, we stayed in a beautiful house in Cape Town, and this is a leisurely sit on the veranda, and you can see the mountain in the background there. That is Lion's Head, I think, in the background. Pretty sure that's Lion's Head, and I think you can see that it's quite a relaxing time. More sketching, sitting with friends on the beach, and family visiting. Just keep the pen moving. Don't let it stop. Whatever you do, back of it, sitting in a car, driving towards a game reserve. Animals in the game reserve. More sketching, I think. That looks like, I think it is me. Oh, yeah, again, see, trying to emulate the machine, I remember what I was doing here. The car was bouncing, and I thought, well, let me just use the motion of the vehicle. So drawing a landscape, but by really, in the most primitive way, like letting the landscape draw. It's essentially what this experiment was. So normally you draw the landscape, you have some kind of agency, but here I'm merely holding the pen on the paper and letting the landscape draw as the vehicle bounces and jumps over the ruts in the road. Yeah, just more of that. More of that idea. I think there's a face there, which is using the landscape to draw a face, like let the vibrations of the car be part of describing that face. Which I think is an interesting idea, which I should actually think about what that means. The idea that we normally have some kind of agency control, or we think we do, over our environment. But we're part of the system. So the environment is us. We're part of it. It's a complex thing. So we have some agency, some ability to control our environment. And that's what gives us our ability to do things in our environment. But actually, when you remove some of those constraints, some of those controls that we have, you get I guess, possibly a more intimate sense of what your environment is by relinquishing some control, or you find yourself in environments where you have less control. There's a more intense relationship with your environment. Oh, maybe. That's an idea. I think it's actually worth playing with. And I think it's part of the experiment I was doing with the Evolver, is when you are interacting with the machine, and especially when the machine is not purposeful, for one thing, and also impossible to control, you have less say over it. You have less, your own identity is less fixable in that. And that's really is an idea from complexity theory. And I remember reading it in the book Gödel, Escher, Bach. This very famous book here, where he referred to the work of Henry Simon. And Simon talks about systems. He actually, Douglas Hofstadter wrote this book. He came up with a nice example, so I'll just mention his example because I think it says it more simply than Herbert Simon's. But what Hofstadter said was that, let's take a soccer team. You're a person. Let's say you're a person, right? And you're a soccer player as well. So when you're not playing soccer, you're this other thing. But when you're playing soccer, you become part of a team. So your identity becomes partly the properties that you have become less what you call you. Less, they can change. There's a shift in what your properties are. Some things are unshiftable, right? Some properties are unchangeable. Like, it doesn't matter what context you put them in, they're always going to display the same properties, the same characteristic behaviors. But some things are much more fluid. So some people, let's just say, take some people and say, oh, notice that person when he's in that crowd of people, he becomes really like this. It becomes a certain way. But when he's in that crowd, his behavior or his identity shifts completely. Like, you don't know who he is anymore. Now that's an example of actually somebody who's quite able to adapt very fluidly to different situations. That it's probably quite a form of high emotional intelligence. And then you get some people who are like exactly as they are, and you admire those people too because of their ability to not lose any sense of their identity. But they both have very different qualities in terms of how they are as part of systems. So I can't remember what point I was trying to make there. That's funny. I can't remember. But anyway, that's can't actually remember. Maybe when I look back in this video, it'll occur to me what point I was trying to make. Any clues for my notebook? No, none whatsoever. So, that's weird. All right, anyway, hopefully some point was made. We can just finish going through this and then we'll call the video. Wow, okay, this is the whole trip that I was on. More thinking about the evolver, and somehow this has actually just arrived in Germany, which is also very interesting. Thinking about very interesting experience being in Germany, visiting my brother-in-law, thinking about branch structures for some reason, because I was driving past winter trees. And in Germany, then thinking about the Chanukia, Jewish symbolism, the Aleph as another branch structure, then very complex Chanukia as a family tree. So it's interesting also to see how the drawing of the Chanukia, it's good that I'm going through this notebook, talks to these sketches here that I made of the phylogenetic tree. So there's the phylogenetic, which is essentially a Chanukia of sorts, a branch structure. And here I'm thinking about it in the context of being in Germany, which is gives it a whole different dimension. Just keep playing around with sitting on a train. Trains are wonderful places to do thinking. There again, driving through German towns, putting the Chanukia in there. German towns with chimneys is always a provocative, it felt like a provocative moment, given the history of the Second World War, the Holocaust. So that was clearly entering my mind, given that I was involved in an illustration project, animation project. So that was taking me right there. Just going with it. More some figurative drawings. Just keep the pen moving, really. Keep the pen moving. Weirdly, I don't know what this is a drawing of, but it absolutely reminds me of who's that German painter who does the upside down figures? I can't remember, but it might come to me. There's something about that aesthetic, weirdly, very much Germanic, I think. Just continuing the drawing process. That's my daughter, that's my nephew. I mean, he's 2 years old, but I made him look 300. Was say, almost eating lentil noodles. Ruthie thinks he needs more cheeks in the drawing, not in real life. Ayel thinks it looks like him as a child. It does have a betting thing about it. At least that is something. Yeah, at least that is something. In the kitchen in the morning, sketching. Still thinking about branch structures. Just a drawing of a kitchen scene. Where is this? Yeah, going for a walk, stopping for coffee somewhere, enjoying the German words. Yeah, this is, just again, continuing the thinking. This is the rub of an ancient castle there. Mapping of a Smurf in the Freiburg countryside from the side of a tower. Yeah, someone had drawn a Smurf, or somehow chipped it away into the side of this old bricks. I was trying to capture it somehow. So that is actually a Smurf, clearly. Keeping the thing going, keeping the drawing going. Yeah, just continuing it. Ruben telling me the longest story ever told. Just keeping it. That's, I think, not me drawing. That's somebody else's drawing. I think it's, if I'm going to get to the back of my notebooks, then my children tend to take them over. Anyway, that's long enough, folks. That's day 6, I believe. So what today seemed to be about was my process. I was talking about my process. So I hope that was of interest to anybody who's interested. So yeah, we'll see what tomorrow brings. I'm just going to do these again, as I said, try and do them every day within reason, and with the concept that any process that you repeat, especially if there's no purpose to it, other than its own evolution, can go somewhere or will give us something. And again, I say us because, yes, it's me as the provoker of it, but I've come to appreciate that there is no such thing as an audience, especially when you're being filmed. There's a performance aspect, and what is evolving is a dynamic. which is influenced by the environment, and as being the observed, you are a participant in that environment, in that system. So I'm not sure in what way, but it's just having the camera on is being observed. I guess it would be different if I could see it populated by people on the other side of the camera. But at this stage, the more important thing is to have the camera on and see what emerges.